Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Soul Ashraya, a weekly bhakti podcast where we seek the shelter and wisdom of our dear Lord Krishna through Shastra, prayer, and conversation. I am your host, Bhakti Jake, joined with my friend and teacher, Balaram Shakti Das. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
How you doing today?
Wow, pretty amazing. Pretty tired.
Yeah.
A lot of late nights, but it's been amazing last few nights, and just gave class this morning. It was actually on. I just realized my whole class was on what we're going to be talking about in the intro, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really enlivening. Really, really wonderful. Had a nice program last night. So,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Very, very nice morning. How are you?
We are finally getting some absolutely beautiful weather here. It's an absolutely beautiful day today. It is the last day of the Rochester Lilac Festival, but those flowers. Okay, so here's the thing is since you're from Rochester, you can appreciate this. So apparently every other year, the lilacs are like a little more, like, I don't know if they're more in like number or if they're like bigger or more beautiful, but this was the year that they were huge. Like every day on my way to work, there's like a lilac plant everywhere from Canandaigua to Rochester. It's like just all lilacs everywhere, like in people's houses, on the side of the road as you're driving in and around the city. They're everywhere. It's so beautiful. I love this time of year. And when you get the right kind of wind and the right kind of weather, that beautiful smell just permeates everything everywhere. That deep, rich, beautiful lilac smell. So I have heard that is actually the reason why they call Rochester the Flower City. I heard that it's not actually because of making flour, like flour that you cook with.
Well, originally it was.
Okay. See, I've heard it both ways too. It's kind of a mystery, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I haven't really researched it. That's just what I had heard. Is 100, whatever years ago, it was flower industry.
Yeah.
And then it hasn't been, so they decided, well, we have really nice flowers here, so let's just call it that.
Yeah. That could be. I know that in the 20s and 30s, they actually thought that Rochester was going to be bigger than New York City.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a whole underground subway system that was state of the art for its time underneath Rochester, because so many people were moving here in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that they really thought, they were like, whoa, with everything going on, we might get bigger than New York City. So they started preparing the infrastructure back then.
Wow.
Yeah. I was working with a friend of mine years ago. He was a union pipe fitter, and he was always working on old houses in the city. And he said that the drainage system in the city is like one of the best because it's relatively new. Like it's much more new than New York City's. because they were just preparing for like more and more and more people to move to Rochester. So, just a little bit of history for you on a Sunday afternoon. Oh my goodness. Hey, I got some.
Yeah, it's like I've heard of it, but I've never thought of Rochester as having underground subways. It's just something that never really connected for me. I was gonna say I've never been down there, but I don't know if this is the same thing, but Nazareth College has some underground tracks that you can take, and like I took that one time with some of my buddies. But it seems like it's just totally shut down, right? Like maybe there's rumors of like people that live down there or something.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Yeah. So back in the 50s, one of the major materials that they used to run the pipes for water and stuff like that in these tunnels was asbestos. So yeah, they shut, like, it's all closed off now because of the asbestos, and like they've actually had to do asbestos abatement for quite a bit down there. So there's tunnels under RIT, like miles of tunnels under RIT, and miles of tunnels under the old Kodak facility, which was like the hub of industry in Rochester for decades. Like I've heard that those tunnels actually go all the way to the lake, and you can actually like come up somewhere at the lake. I mean, I don't know. You hear a lot of things, but yeah, there's like underground tunnels everywhere in the city, apparently. So, yeah. So, I don't know. I've been thinking about maybe moving down there. I mean, check it out sometime. I mean,
Yeah. Sewer rats.
yeah,
Ninja Turtle life.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So before we get into it, I did want to show off these awesome kartals that I found. So you can make kartals out of just about anything. So that's that. Okay. Now we can go on to the book.
All right, yeah, let's tune in.
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarubhishcha Kripasindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Yeah. So we left off at a good part, and now we're going to really start getting into some really interesting stuff here in the Krishna book. So everybody can see that.
Yeah.
So, yes, let me get the little share screen going here. And if you want to pick right up where we left off, by all means, I will let you read.
Okay.
I believe we left off at liberated souls.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Jai. Sounds like you got a cat back there.
I believe that's the golden pheasant. Or no, actually that might be the peacock.
Really?
Yeah, there's 2 peacocks here.
Really?
Yeah. You want to see?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's like a.
You see, there's the male and there's the female. Oh, he's getting up. Maybe show off.
Wow.
It's hard. Yeah. And then there's the little lovebirds over there. Yeah.
Wow. That is like the real deal right there when you got some peacocks going on at your temple.
Yeah.
Man.
Bona fide Krishna temple status. Vrindavan status.
Wow. What a blessing. What a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, liberated souls.
Yes.
Have no interest in materialistic activities. The impersonalist theory that after liberation one becomes inactive and need not hear anything does not prove that a liberated person is actually inactive. A living soul cannot be inactive. He is active either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state. A diseased person, for example, is also active, but his activities are all painful. The same person, when freed from the diseased condition, is still active, but in a healthy condition, the activities are full of pleasure. Similarly, the impersonalists only seek to get free from the diseased conditioned activities, but they have no information of activities in a healthy condition. Those who are actually liberated and full knowledge take to hearing the activities of Krishna. Such engagement is pure spiritual activity. So you're probably familiar with this concept that impersonalists, right? The whole impersonalist school is saying that the whole point of existence is to cease all activity, right? That the problems of life that the consciousness is experiencing are due to activity, karma. And so you have to stop karma, which is partially true. You do have to stop your karma, but that doesn't mean stop activity. Karma means activity, but it means you stop material karma and take up spiritual activity, which is akarma, which means non-action, right? Krishna says in the Gita, you have to understand action and inaction, inaction and action, right? So it's this example is really nice of a diseased person. So all of our activities are in the diseased condition, material life, and therefore they're painful. But the impersonalists assume, just because they don't have knowledge of spiritual activity, they assume that ceasing material activity means that spiritual life is inactive. That's not the case. So the soul can never be inactive. You know, if you're active in the embodied state, why would your activities cease? You know, that would be a limitation on the soul. So it means there's no knowledge of the spiritual world. So it is essential for persons who are actually liberated to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. That is the supreme relishable subject matter for one in a liberated state. Also, if persons who are trying to be liberated hear such narrations as the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then their path of liberation becomes very clear. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam. By studying the Gita, one becomes fully conscious of the position of Lord Krishna. And when he is situated at the lotus feet of Krishna, he understands the narrations of Krishna as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya has therefore advised his followers that their business is to propagate Krsna-katha.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking I would say something first on, well, he's going to get into this as well in the following paragraph, but hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and studying these narrations, descriptions, and the topics relating to Krishna versus materialistic mundane conversation. And this was, again, this is the topic of the verse from this morning, how devotees relish conversation about Krishna unlimitedly, infinitely. And so Prabhupada poses the question that most people would have. It's like, how can you be so interested in talking about God all the time? Like, how is there so much to talk about?
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it. So it's like, for most people, their conception of God is very simplistic. So okay, I can understand. Like the impersonalist theories. Well, actually, yeah, there are three things. Chapter 4, verse 10 states, Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashrita. So those who take shelter, upashrita, of Krishna, they have conquered Vita, because they've conquered these three things, raga, bhaya, and krodha. And these are basically three conceptions that hinder one from worshiping God. Three kind of states of mind, three phases, if you will. So the first phase is raga, which means attachment to material, subject matter, really. Material world is a reflection of the spiritual worlds, right? It's a perverted reflection. The real thing is God, right? The real thing is Krishna and his relationships with the devotees, which is in our heart. There's a dormant seed of that world, of that life, and our relationship with God. And that seed has to be nourished by hearing about Krishna. By hearing and chanting comes remembrance. And in this way, we take back our original nature as spirit souls, right? So we have to nourish that. And being in the material world is due to a turning away from that, right? We turn away from that. We want to experience what life is like without God. So everything that we're experiencing, it's all a reflection or a refraction of the original light, if you will, of the spiritual reality of immense and infinite, ever-expanding drama, right? And so, like, Prabhupada is going to talk about like this sex feeling is like the strongest attraction we have here, that it comes from the spiritual worlds, and that's in a pure state there, whereas here it's impure because we exploit other bodies with that feeling, right? We're not connecting on a level of the soul. It might seem like we are sometimes, but we're not, because if we were connecting the soul, it means spiritual world. In spiritual world, it means Krishna's in the center, whereas here we're in the center. And so we have our different things. It's like, we're talking about Rochester, and it's like, that's our city, it's our hometown. And it's like everyone considers their hometown to be like a place of pilgrimage, right? It's like a holy place. My day of birth is a holy day. Everyone should, render worship.
Yes. Yes.
to my extended sense of self, right? So everything related to me, my home, my family, it was like, what's more special about your family than all of the other families? And so it's not that it's like unreal and we should just reject that, because yeah, it's interesting, right? It is interesting. And we have some life in that, but the point is that it's temporary and it's limited. It's very limited, whereas the soul itself craves for more. And so the more deep we get into that pursuit, it drives us into deeper and darker ignorance, right? Because we're going away from the spiritual reality and we're trying to go deeper into the material reality. You try to control things in your life. This is the way that my story was supposed to be. Like, I wanted Rochester to be like this, or I wanted my family to be like this, or my wife to be like that, or my job to be like this, right? And we're trying to control all these factors to make that perfect world. It's like, that's not the nature of the material world. That's the spiritual world. And you have to consent to enter back into that world as a servant, right? Whereas here, we're trying to be served by everything. So there is some relish, there's some rasa, right? As we were saying a few sessions ago, right? The science of the rasa. There's material rasa, heavenly or subtle rasa, and then there's spiritual rasa, which is Krishna. So the mundane rasas are interesting, and it's like we can have a little bit of conversation about that, but there's only so far that we can take that. You talk about Rochester, Buffalo Bills. At a certain point, it's going to get stale, right? And so we can understand these are reasons why that is. There's no actual substance there, and it's very limited. But it's a perverted reflection of the real substance. So raga is the first phase. We're attracted by the impermanent, right? Whereas the liberated souls have no interest in materialistic activities, right? And then what's the second one? The impersonalist theory that after liberation one becomes inactive. That's bhaya. So the second phase is, okay, I'm not really into material things so much, but I've become averse to them because personality I've found to always have problems associated with it. So dealing with people and with persons and with the variety of a world, right, with all these different shapes, forms, sounds, and it's a complicated mess. So if this is like this, if matter is like this, then spirit has to be the opposite. No form, no personality, no anything, just peace, right? I don't have to deal with problems. It's like there's something higher than peace, and that's love. Love is so much higher than peace. And love does not require there to be no problems. Actually, problems enhance love because you dig deeper. So spiritual world, don't think that there's not going to be problems. But the solution is always the same. It's love. And it just goes deeper and gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter.
Yeah.
So there's this fear, Balinese fear. So there's a fear of retaining a personality. So we take shelter of this philosophy of no personality. And then Krodha is the third stage, and that's anger. And that means you see all these different philosophies. Hare Krishna is in there, and they've got their philosophy, and what makes them any different from anyone else's philosophy. All I'm seeing is all these different contradictions. This religion says Jesus is the only. With this religion says this is the only thing. And they're all contradicting. I've had enough of it. I don't like it. I'm going to take to intoxication generally, and I'm going to make my own religion. I'm going to worship mushroom, and that's God to me. I have my truth. You have yours. I don't care about you. So there's this like nest of anger, and so Krishna said, you got to give all those up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything too, couldn't it? I mean, it could be, you know, anything, literally anything that you make an idol out of, I guess. So like an idolatry in your heart, you know.
Right.
Big difference between having idolatry in your heart, because that really is a lustful thing, is what that is. And it's born out of, like, you know, just sheer ignorance, I guess, because, you know, okay, you're sick of this, you're sick of the material world. But as humans, I don't know, unless we have like that that deep longing to be with God, to know God satisfied, maybe even at a very early age. It seems like after a while, once you start getting older, you just kind of forget about it. And then you really do. You start doing your own thing. You know, you start wanting to worship weird things and different things. You know, the drug scene is a great example of that. Um, but then again, it could be anything. I mean, like we were talking about straight edge yesterday, you know, I mean, there's people out there like with their bodies completely covered with tattoos, and like it's still not enough. They're like, is there just one more inch of skin on my body that I can cover with a tattoo somewhere, you know? Or, you know, is there like, you know, it could be anything. And we get wrapped into this material mess, and like our minds become this material vortex. I actually used that that term last
Wow.
night. Like you feel like there's, yeah, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And it's like your mind is like like a stormy ocean, you know, it's like never satisfied, it's never calm. So Krishna, God, wants to calm the storm in your mind, the vortex, the raging vortex in your mind. So that's what I'm inferring here by what we're talking about today. And that is with Krsna-katha.
Yeah, Krsna-katha and Krishna Nam, the name of God, you know, because the Maha Mantra, right? Mantra, we talked about this a few weeks ago, means to free the mind, right? Literally to clear. I love that analogy. It's a vortex, and that's the vicious cycle, right? You get addicted to something, you get into something, and you lose yourself in it, and it draws you down. You know, that motive passion of more and more and more. You know, I can't be satisfied. It's like if I just had more, then I'll be satisfied. There's that enticement, which is an illusion. That's Maya,
Yeah.
right? If you get some of this, then you'll be satisfied, you know, or if you worship this, if you make your life about this, you know, just identify yourself as a Bills guy or as a Harley guy, and that'll give you a sense of satisfaction, right? That'll really give you a sense of meaning. Or even like, you know, Republican, Christian, whatever, we're taking on these identifications, these denominations, designations, rather, thinking that that's going to be a stable thing, that foundation that we can build our life on, right? The fact is that none of those things external are going to have any viable foundation. That's why people have a midlife crisis, because they realize, like, I thought I was building my life on something solid, and I'm realizing it has not succeeded in fulfilling that hole in my heart, no matter what idol I put there. You know, eventually, you know, I meant midlife crisis. Usually, crisis means an opportunity, right? The original Greek word, I don't remember exactly what the translation is. I heard this recently, but it's not a negative thing. It means it's like a threshold for you to evolve. And so the idea is that you need to meet it and go through it and evolve. But most people at crisis, they'll either succeed, Haribol, or they'll fail and fall back down, or what's in between is they're not able to succeed, but they don't fail either. They compromise. So it looks like they succeed, but they really failed, actually. So most people, their midlife crisis, they just make a compromise. Okay, life isn't fulfilling. Well, I guess I'll just settle for this. I thought I was going to have this super great life, and I wound up with this like not so nice wife and kids that are little Tasmanian devils. Well, this didn't go the way that I planned, but it seemed like this is just how it is. So let me just settle, right? So that's not very good at all. So these designations that we take on and these various idols, this is really, really good way to look at it, is it's like all these things, they all are taken up in like, what is the central idol of your life? And with religion, it's abolishing the idols, the forms of lust that we're meditating on and we're pursuing in life, right? That's what an idol really is. And you're instead installing a deity. You're installing the deity, which is the Lord, who the heart is the rightful property. It's his rightful throne to be installed there. That's what the heart is for. The heart is for to be made as a temple of the Lord, right? And the body is to be an extension of that temple. So all of Krishna consciousness is directly nurturing that the relationship with the deity. It's actually two things. It's nurturing the relationship, which is shifting your consciousness, which is real yoga. That's bhakti. That's, your soul is getting closer to the super soul. And then at the time of death, your destination is very known. There is no, midlife crisis has been conquered like from the beginning, because you're putting the real thing there, as opposed to making something up and then having to compromise and deal with it.
Yeah.
And then the second is that you're carving your life. So this is called yoga. So there's bhakti and there's yoga, in a sense. You could look at it like that. And bhakti is the heart movement. You're being moved by the heart, which, how are you moved? You need to hear from someone who's moved, right? Associate with someone who's pure, their heart has been moved by God. And then the yoga is you're carving your life. You're doing things that are good for you, and you're developing a routine, a rhythm, and in that rhythm, that did you just use you're using the turbulent waters of the storm of the mind, right?
Yeah.
That's because we have the storm because our life is unregulated. We're following the whims of our mind, which is taking us through all this turbulence. But if we develop real clean, healthy habits, we're taking care of ourselves, we're doing things in a regulated, regimented way. Doesn't mean like a stiff or cold way. Heart has to be there, and flexibility is of course there, but we're operating under a higher order. So the scriptures are giving us this very systematic way of living your life, taking care of your body, your mind, your spirit. And in that way, you're going to carve your life. Think about this. You're like carving this groove. And it's like, I'm doing this thing and I'm getting deeper and more refined at it. And you become very strong in that. When the winds come, you're not going to get knocked over because you've gone deep in this track. Whereas if you don't establish those tracks, if you don't have roots, if you don't have direction, right, you're just going to get blown out. And it happens all the time. Anyway, there's a lot there, but that's what we're doing here. So Krsna-katha, hearing about Krishna, is what is going to nourish the heart and the soul, right? The soul proper is being nourished. because we're hearing about the super soul. The more that we hear about the super soul, Krishna really reveals himself. This is what's happening. Every word that we're reading of this book is a divine revelation. So the deity within our heart is revealing himself to us, right? And if we continue on one track, it's like, okay, I accept that Krishna is the source of all forms of God. Therefore, if I worship Krishna, the form of the deity that is most intimately resonant with my soul will reveal himself to me, my Ishtadeva, my personal deity. Because God has a unique relationship with each soul. So it's for you to discover your relationship with Krishna. And your Krishna may not look the same as my Krishna, right? But we say chanting Hare Krishna will work no matter who your deity is, because the sound it's viable for purest worship of God and the highest form of that worship, which is simultaneously cleaning up your life, adding order to your life, as well as really awakening that divinity, that supreme spirit within you. So that's what we're going for here, and that's very enlivening, and that subject matter is very relishable, right? Again, so we started talking about that yesterday, and continuing here. So Chaitanya therefore advised his followers that their business is to propagate Krsna-katha, right? That's where we left off. So this is the movement that Chaitanya has inaugurated. Here's the highest manifestation of divinity, and just a little bit of contact with Krishna will greatly awaken that deity within your heart, like profoundly. There's no other form of God that is as potent in this sound vibration as Hare Krishna. So the purpose of Chaitanya coming here was really to propagate this. All right, you want to pick up that paragraph?
I'll pick up right there. Okay. Krsna-katha means narrations about Lord Krishna.
I'll put the screen share.
Is it what now? Sorry.
The screen share?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, screen share.
Yeah, almost ready.
Actually, okay, yes. Here we go. All right. Yes. There it is. I'm not 100% on what people can or can't see when I do the screen share.
It looks like it's got this green outline, which means that's the screen that they're seeing. So
okay. Just straight from Beta Base, if anyone is wondering where we're getting that from. So yes, Krsna-katha means narrations about Lord Krishna. There are two Krsna-kathas, narrations spoken by Krishna and narrations spoken about Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita is the narration or the philosophy on the science of God spoken by Krishna himself. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration about the activities and transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Both are Krsna-katha. It is the order of Lord Chaitanya that Krsna-katha should be spread all over the world, because if the conditioned souls suffering under the pangs of material existence take to Krsna-katha, then their path of liberation will be open and clear. The purpose of presenting this book is to primarily to induce people to understand Krishna or Krsna-katha, because thereby they can become freed from material bondage. Let me look this up real quick. Okay. So Krsna-katha will also be very much appealing to the most materialistic persons because Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, cowherd girls, are exactly like the loving affairs between young girls and boys within this material world. Exactly. The sex feeling found in human society is not unnatural because this same sex feeling is there in the original personality of Godhead. The pleasure potency is called Srimati Radharani. The attraction of loving affairs on the basis of sex feeling is the original feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we, the conditioned souls, being part and parcel of the Supreme, have such feelings also, but they are experienced within a perverted, minute condition. Therefore, when those who are after sex life in this material world hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, they will relish transcendental pleasure, although it appears to be materialistic. The advantage will be that they will gradually be elevated to the spiritual platform. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that if one hears the pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis from authorities with submission, then he will be promoted to the platform of transcendental loving service to the Lord. And the material disease of lust within his heart will be completely vanquished. In other words, such hearing will counteract material sex life.
Jai. All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That's huge,
Yeah.
huge paragraph.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. Something that I really feel needs to be addressed. You know, I mean, in America in 2023, yeah.
So what are you getting from this?
Well, I'm getting that sex in the spiritual form is completely different than the material, than what we're experiencing on this plane of existence that we're on now. So I'm not 100%. It seems like it's probably more natural, maybe, or I don't know. It's so hard to say because in the spirit world, things are so different anyway. You know, like it's like it really is kind of like the real world. You know, like the spirit world is so much more real than this like thing that we're in now. You know, like this reality on this plane of existence.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm getting out of it. This is literally the first time I've ever read this.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea that this was a thing at all. I had no idea. I had no idea that this was a thing. I always wondered why, like, when you see pictures of Krishna, he's always next to Radha. So I was always wondering about that. And I thought it was because, like, you know, maybe artistic license, or because like there's like it's just depicting him with her all the time because it I guess it's supposed to be representing like this our relationship spiritually to Krishna is an intimate relationship. Like I guess that's what I thought it was always representing, along with like the artistic, like it just looks good, you know? So yeah, okay. This is blowing my mind, so you can talk for a while now. I'm learning today. We're having a learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful couples always look beautiful, right? Okay, so this is really amazing point here, or several points. So the first is that the loving affairs materially between boys and girls, is a very appealing thing for us, right? And Prabhupada explaining that that's not unnatural, that this feeling is actually coming from Krishna. It's coming from God, spiritual world. So it's inherent to us. But it is a perverted reflection. So the idea is that material sex is generally speaking, it's an addiction. Which, what is the nature of addictions? You lose yourself in it. So when you're having sex, you're not finding yourself, you're letting go. And that feeling of letting go is actually what we're getting so much pleasure from. Of course, then there's the, all the tingling of the senses, which is very pleasurable, but you get diminishing returns from that. It becomes less and less pleasurable over time. And that's, there's all these drugs out and all these kinky things, you can get into, but it's like that novelty factor you're just chasing. So it's not like a super sustainable thing. It's this very frustrating thing. It's like, well, it feels like so good, but I can't get satisfied by it. Like, what's up with that? That it's so strange. It's like, yeah, because that's not the highest thing. Love is supreme. So what is love? Well, I thought we're making love here. I thought that's what we're doing. It's like, no, you're making love with your genitals and your senses, your body. The personalities, though, and that's why, there is definitely the experience of making love to some degree in the material world when two souls become very close, right? And they get to know each other very well, right? They commit in a relationship, and they, go through all this cathartic, transformation and growth with each other, which is generally only possible, or it's really possible in its fullest extent when you're on the same path in life, right? Then, and that, I mean, that's even if you're on different paths, but if you have the same goal, you're able to work together. You have to be working together. And the only way to work together in the highest sense is if God is that, third point in the triangle of your relationship. Because no two souls are exactly alike. No two souls are going to be on exactly the same path per se. But God is the same destination. And so you're able to more and more subtly work things out so that, your souls become very close. Like your body and mind, that the soul is inhabiting, become very congenial together. And then there's more love, but it's not because of the sex itself. It's just the actual interplay, the dynamic of love being exchanged through serving one another. That is what feels good. And that is not restricted to the sex chakra, right? The gonads. It's not restricted to that biology, which that biology is not meant to bring you the highest pleasure. It's simply meant to reproduce. That's what it's made for. And it feels good because, there has to be some incentive or else you wouldn't do it. Like, if you break it down, if you took the pleasure factor out of it and you just kind of were to sit back and observe, like, what are you actually doing? You're just like rubbing your bodies all together and like you know, your saliva is getting all, it's like, it's kind of gross. It's like, I don't know if I want to do that. But, you know, you need to propagate the species. Right? So spiritually, you know, even before getting to spiritual level, just, you know, we have these other energy centers in our body that if we, instead of spending the energy with our reproductive organs, then the energy leaves down there. If you bring it up, you can experience higher pleasures within your body, right? And that's because you're learning how to connect with people, not just on a gross physical level. You're learning how to connect with them, you know, more subtle. You know, you're getting real with people, and that's very pleasurable. The highest pleasure, you know, is really helping someone else discover themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And like that's amazing, you know, and you know, sex, it can be there, but it's really, it's meant as reproductive faculty. And when we misuse that, then, you know, the addiction gets in there, you know, we start lusting, and the making love aspect gets corrupted a great deal. So love really is what's going on. So in the spiritual world, real love is there, right? And it has nothing to do with the lower chakras, right? It's being enacted and being performed on higher levels. So when we see Radha and Krishna, Radha is the original potency of that sex feeling. She is God's internal pleasure potency personified. And a spark of that potency is what is pervertedly reflected in material sex. So we're experiencing the same quality of pleasure, but very, very diminished. So, and very temporary, very fleeting, and very, it's actually kind of traumatic, you know, sex, because again, it's the experience of dissolution of boundaries. This is how Krsna explains it. It's, you know, you're being opened up, and that experience of being vulnerable with someone, right? Like that's very pleasurable, right? So, but then when you get the sex organs involved, you know, it's such a deep thing that we're not really capable, we're not really mature as a culture, as a society. Maybe some people are, but really actually no one is. No one is mature enough to touch you in that intimate a way except God, right? Because God knows you from the inside out, whereas we're trying to know each other from the outside in. And so we're pushing all these buttons. We're not really sure what they all do. We just know that it feels good because we're being vulnerable and we're exposing ourselves, and that dissolution of boundaries, that breaking out of yourself is pleasurable when you feel safe, of course, obviously, right? It's just entangling when we're doing those things with the material body, right? There's problems involved, you know, and then, you know, maybe children are involved that you weren't planning on having, and obviously there's all those repercussions, which is all part of the learning experience. But with spiritual sex, right, the original spiritual loving exchange, there's nothing material about it. So there's nothing about entangling your, you know, your bodies together. It's purely relational with personalities. So it looks exactly like girls and boys enjoying each other's company, but it never goes down to that gross level of bodies just rubbing together, because again, the real substance behind the pleasure in that is having a relationship where you trust each other. You're letting go with each other, right? You're letting your boundaries down, and you're letting that person into your life. That's what's pleasurable. That's why we feel like I'm making love, is because this person's entering my world and I'm letting them touch me, right? That's super pleasurable. So that's what Krishna is doing with the gopis, but not on a physical level. He's dancing with them, you know, he's leading them through these adventures, you know, and these romantic, like, extremely romantic episodes, right? And he's just churning the emotions in their hearts. That's what God is doing. And so spiritual sex, it's like, this is how we connect with that, is Radha, Krishna, this is the divine couple. So that's God. This is how God himself, as both male and female, is experiencing love. Radha Krishna is the manifestation of God's love internally, whereas marginally, and then there's external, his love is expanding outwards, because love, it expands. It can't contain itself. You can't, when you're in love, you cannot contain it. You have to give it. You have to, export.
Yeah.
It's like, I got too much. Here, I got to give it out. That's the nature of love. Lust is obviously all about contraction. It's the opposite of that. So Krishna expands his internal love with these innumerable living entities.
Yeah.
And he says, come dance with us, participate. So that's our origin, is we're all part of this dance of Krishna, Radha, gopis, all of these spiritual expansions of the personality of Godhead, right? It all branches out like that. And we are marginal, so we have the free will, the freedom to choose whether we want to participate in that dance of love, of ever expanding pure bliss, or if we want to turn to the external material energy and try to be the center of our own dance. And that's lust, right? We try to enjoy ourselves. I have an itch, I want to scratch it. It's like, maybe I'll give myself a little bit, but I'll always hold out for number one. So if we make Krishna number one, how we experience that pleasure, so that pleasure potency is pervertedly reflected in our lusty pleasures, but it regains, or it opens in you, it manifests in you as Srimati Radharani when we're engaged in devotional service. And actually, I'm thinking back, I got really deep into learning about this back when we had your gig at the Bhakta Barn. It was Radharani's appearance day. I think you missed a lot of the talk around, but we're talking about this, how the pleasure potency acts in two ways. One is that she directly gives pleasure to Krishna, right? She's pleasing Krishna. The other is that she is manifesting within the heart of the devotee as the joy, which is the joy of Krishna when we're serving Krishna. So then what we do, so the whole point is pleasing Krishna, giving pleasure to Krishna, which is Radha. Radha means to give pleasure to Krishna, like literally, like to worship, to give pleasure, devotion. She is the energy of devotion. So when we engage in devotional service, the point is that we are connecting Radha with Krishna. We're giving pleasure to God. And that's what it looks like in the ultimate issue, is it looks like you are helping Radha and Krishna come together to enjoy. And when you do that, Radharani manifests within your heart as this devotional ecstasy. And that's God's ecstasy. Again, it's coming from God. Radharani is Krishna. So that goddess of devotion is entering your heart, in a sense. And she is helping you to install the deity of Krishna in your heart, because that's what she's trying to do. And so together, this is worship of Radha Krishna, and this is why we chant Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna is Radha Krishna. And when you chant these names, they are non-different from the persons. So when you chant them together, you're bringing Radha Krishna together. That is spiritual sex, and you are engaging in that. So that is the sacrifice that is spiritual life. Spiritual life means to sacrifice, right? And so the highest sacrifice in all of existence is to chant Hare Krishna. That is the highest means and the final end of giving pleasure to God. That is the conclusion. That is the finale of all religion, of everything. That is everything. It's if you're bringing Radha Krishna together, you're on the highest platform, right? And you're directly participating. You're bringing them together. And in the spiritual world, you may be, very small. It's like you're not going to be front and center. It's like, oh, I'm in the middle of the rasa dance with Krishna, enjoying. It's like, no, actually, a higher position is to be supporting that. Like the more advanced, it's like the more I want to just be on the sideline, and I want to help everyone else get closer to Krishna. And that is our Gaudiya Vaishnava path. Our lineage is, this is how we do. This is how we do. We support the servants of Radharani because they are perfect in what they do. They are eternally doing that service of dancing with Krishna, enjoying with Krishna. So we just become servants, and that way we're linking ourselves, and we're direct. It's still direct participation. It's not like indirect takes away, because spiritual world is absolute. So if you're participating in the spiritual world, you are absolutely involved directly. You're directly pleasing Krishna. But the way that we please Krishna is through this quote unquote indirect pathway of disciplic succession, because that's how we get linked into that service, right? Which is also another topic, but very important.
Yeah, well, I absolutely.
So yeah, please go ahead.
I absolutely believe that, and so a little more insight on the power of the Maha Mantra, and when you break it all down, all of these words in that mantra really do mean something, and they all have a meaning, and it's our job to discover what that meaning is. And Hare Krishna, that is the Hari is the feminine, and that is going along with Krishna, which is the masculine. This part, this introduction, the few paragraphs that we read today were amazing. And we will continue on with this discussion. Unfortunately, that is our time for today. But I want to thank the viewers and thank you so much, Balaram, for all of your spiritual insight. I am so grateful for your association and for your wisdom and how you can break things down so easily. And what a blessing you are. You really are. And I just appreciate you so much. And I appreciate the seva that we're doing together. And if you want to try to check us out, I am Bhakta Jake on Instagram, and we have a WhatsApp page for this podcast called the Soul Ashraya Podcast. And also, if you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. Now, we were just talking about the power of the Maha Mantra. We are going to leave our viewers today with that very same mantra, as we do every show. And if you want to lead us in that, by all means.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare.
All right, you wonderful, beautiful people. Thank you for watching us and putting up with us. We will catch you next time on the Soul Ashraya Haribo.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.